Pastor with no answers, folks, community, listeners, whatever you want to call yourselves. I'm game for it. It does kind of seem like this is a listenership that's kind of a community that represents a whole lot of people. I think there's people that I would maybe call more straight-laced and conservative with their approach to faith, and maybe is curious as to some progressive approaches to it. There's also some very despicable, vulgar, progressive people that follow this podcast. Honestly, I do feel like at the core, there's some people that look at Joey Svendsen as someone who is on a very similar path that they are on. And I think when we find people on a similar path, it is encouraging. Oftentimes that person is either way ahead of them on that path or way behind. But either way, it just makes you feel good to not be so alone. Some people aren't alone. They have people in their local community, but some people don't. And that's actually kind of a really cool thing about technology, is that a listenership of a podcast can kind of be connected in a neat way of engaging in similar conversations by, even though it's one-sided listening to a conversation. But I still think that it's really cool to be a part of a group of people that questions a lot, but doesn't want or doesn't feel like they could even do this if they wanted to, and that is leave following Jesus, like to stop doing that. It's a part of us, it's truth to us, and we're just not going to do it because we feel very loved. And I do want to say that there are some opportunities for there to be more than just a one-sided conversation by listening to the podcast. You can go to Facebook and search for Pastor with No Answers discussion group. And it's actually a group that group is not created by me, but I chime in on there a good bit. And here's a question that I just threw up there. I actually tweeted recently. It basically reads, I really feel, actually it says, in the church world, young folks prefer older, weathered, wiser. And then I say, like very authoritatively, I promise, let's knock it off this misconception of needing young, hip leaders. I'll be honest with you, I really positioned myself as to be authoritative on this, and I don't really know for sure if I'm right. I just think that I am, at least with people that I rub shoulders with and some of the younger people. I guess I'm mainly thinking here like 20s and 30s, which is younger than me. I really don't think that most of those folks are saying, give me the young hip leaders that are my age or younger. I think they're like, please let me learn from people that know what they're talking about and have been around the block. And not to say anything negative about the potential of learning from peers by any means. I just think that people gravitate a little more towards people that are a little bit older. So anyway, you can go to Pastor with No Answers discussion group, chime in on that. I actually have like a little poll that you can answer and then comment. I also want to welcome Trisha Quinn and Javier Arroyo to the Pastor with No Answer Patreon group. And that is also an opportunity where not only you can support this podcast financially, but you can also be a part of conversations on different social media platforms. There's a lot of conversations going on Marco Polo, and we actually had a cool little group discussion digitally, me and a couple other patrons a few days ago that was awesome. So I really do appreciate folks that support this podcast. It actually is very helpful, and one of these days I can tell you how I spend that money, but it has been very helpful with getting this podcast and different spheres and trying some things and all that sort of thing. So thank you all. I want to say that later on in the week, I am going to release a little 30-minute episode introducing two new co-hosts of this show that you'll be hearing more from. I'm really excited for you to get to know them. Two dear friends of mine that honestly I've learned a lot from. And we have a neat little talk on many things, but it's all jam-packed into 30 minutes. There's no one-on-one interview because I just kind of want you to hear from those guys. And so looking forward to you hearing that. Right now, though, is John Mark Mcmillan, a friend of mine. We talk a lot about faith and how ours have changed. Don't forget, at the end of this episode, there's a sneak peek of his album, Peopled with Dreams, that is coming out on Valentine's Day, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you guys for listening and enjoy the show. All right, we're here with John Mark Mcmillan. And John, I was thinking, here's what's funny is I say John, and I don't even know, do people call you John Mark or John?
People call me both.
Yeah.
My wife always tells me, you need to tell people to call you John Mark. So my friends call me John Mark, but it's not odd to be called John and the occasional,
Gotcha.
Mark as well. But
right, and the reason why I say that is it's kind of I think I've talked about this sort of thing before, but you and I, we've texted back and forth every now and then, but it's weird. It's like, I think you're my friend.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Like
I think of you as my friend too. Probably some of it is
it's weird because, yeah, go ahead.
I'm used to hearing your voice in my ears, and so I just, you feel like you're friends with your podcasting people that you listen to.
Totally. But I was thinking, I was like, I think that there's probably a type of personality that would see someone that they've texted back and forth with, and make no mistake about it, you and I have texted more deeper stuff. It hasn't been all super shallow, but I do think that there's some personality types, and I'm not even saying lesser of people that would be like, no, we're not friends. I mean, we kind of texted back and forth, but like, you and I got on this Skype call, and it was just like, oh, this is my friend, man. I like this guy.
Well, thanks, man. Well, I kind of feel that way too. I don't know why exactly, but I do. I identify with you for some reason. I'm not sure. Yeah. Maybe we're both from the South, or I feel like we know a lot of the same people, and I don't know.
Yeah. Don't know either. So I want to talk a lot about, where you are at in your faith and how you see the church and all that. But I want to get some business out of the way first.
Yep.
I was thinking about there seemed to be like and I don't know if it was just our church or if it was like a big legal thing that was happening, but we, like at Seacoast, everyone was required to actually list the copyright, like who wrote this song and the year. It was like mandated. You have to do that from now on and everything. And I was just curious, do you get paid when churches sing How He Loves Us? Like, are you still making money from that? I mean, it's a humongous song. You wrote it and everybody is using it. Like, can you make a decision to say, I want to get paid for this sort of thing? I mean, how does that work?
Yep.
I don't know the business side.
Yep. That one's a really interesting one. Yes, you do in a roundabout way get paid when churches play your song. So there's this company, they're based out of Portland, called CCLI. I think it's Christian Copyright and Licensing. And from what I remember, I've met the guys before. From what I remember, there was a court case way back, I want to say in the 80s or early 90s, where a church was playing a song by an artist, and it was a big church in town, and the artist found out they were doing his song, and I don't think he was a believer. I don't know that it matters, but I don't think he's a believer, but he sued the church, and it turns out that the church had no idea. They're like, how do we even, one, we don't even know the laws, and number two, how would we would be fine to support this person we're using their and it was a big thing, and the CCLI, the people who ended up creating CCLI, saw this and thought, like, there really should be a way to help churches, support the artists, because from a legal perspective, anytime someone uses your song in public, they should pay a performance royalty. So all the venues do this. Like, when you play a show at a venue, you always turn in your set list, and they go to ASCAP and CSAC and those types of organizations, performance royalty organizations, and every year they buy a license. So I don't think they pay per song, but they buy a license every year from these companies for all the songs. So CCLI is the same way. So churches buy one license to use all the songs. And what's really cool about CCLI is that they don't just give you a license. They also like give you access to chord charts and videos, and they make it like they make it a resource. And really, at the end of the day, they're helping churches do the legal thing, And
so when you say all the songs, so someone the church pays a one-time fee to use all of your songs, and you get that money?
The church, I believe, so, I'm not really a worship leader in church, but I know a little bit about how it works, is they pay a monthly or annual subscription, basically. So anyone who signed up through CCLI, and at this point, it's anyone you can ever imagine who writes worship songs is signed up through CCLI. So
how do they know how much to pay you? It's like CCI. Well, does CCI pay you?
Yeah, CCLI will pay me. So what CCLI does is the churches report every year the songs that they play. And so
Gotcha.
they pick the songs that were played the most. They get paid more, And I think it's changed. For a while, it was like not every church has to report every year. It was like an algorithm type thing. But I think now, it's easier because the churches can literally report through Planning Center or whatever.
Yeah.
Directly to CCLI. So yeah, I do in a roundabout way get paid from when churches play How He Loves, but it's not like every time a church plays it, I get paid for that. It's that, if it gets reported enough, then it stays. So How He Loves is funny. I think it's been in the top 20 CCLI, definitely in the top 50 since 2008 or something like that, for a long time. Yeah. And so, no, it's been great. It has. It's interesting though. There's not this kind of thing almost anywhere in any other genre of music, right? Like, this is like one of the only places where this works, and that's what makes Christian music and worship music unique. And that's why you see there aren't really CCM artists anymore. They're all worship artists. It's because sales don't really matter anymore unless you're at the top of the top, unless you're Beyonce or Jay-Z or Bieber and your record is in Walmart, which is like, or Target, like you're not really selling music anymore. It's all streams, which is the economics are way, 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 way different. So there's not, the sales don't exist anymore, for the most part. So the church money is huge, and it's been awesome for me, but also I feel like it can have some negative effects on the way we make music, because all of a sudden the church is a big cash cow and all the businesses and cashing in on the CCLI stuff, which I'm not going to complain about because it's helped me afford to do a lot of the stuff that I've done over the years. I produce all my own records, and I've funded I've funded every record I've done except for one. I've funded them all myself. And I've been able to do pretty much what I want to do because of it. So I'm not complaining.
So at any point, say, mind your daggum business. But I mean, are we talking a substantial percentage of your income and livelihood comes from songs that you've already written, or are we talking kind of minuscule? Like, are we talking big bucks?
It would be substantial. How He Loves is not. I mean, at a point, How He Loves was probably 50% of my income. That's not true anymore. It's gone down. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
it's definitely dipped. That's the nature of the beast. You have the arc. So well, I don't know. 50, maybe 50 is strong. Maybe not 50, but it was like a solid percentage of my income. At a point, but yeah.
I think what's irritating for me, and it's really just kind of like a bird's eye view of all of this, is if you are in the game of worship song writing, at least what I hear from those worship leaders, all I hear is, I'm doing this for God's glory, and I write these songs for ministry, and it's like this purified approach of music, and it's like, well, at least also say, I would love to make a lot of money from a song.
It's true.
You know what I'm saying?
It's true.
I mean,
totally.
Like, just at least say this is a business too.
Yeah, totally. Which I actually think would be more honest, and actually would be more even godly thing to do. Because what happens is, like, they make a lot of money. Like, oh, the Lord's just blessing me. I was like, He's blessing you with money? I was like, because I know a lot of evil people who are blessed with money too. So like, the worldly success is not the stamp of God's approval, but a lot of people act like it is. But you don't have to walk very far to realize that that's not true. Yeah. But I like CCLI. I think it's a good thing. I think they're doing a good service. I think the downside is that because people know there's money there, they write for that. And so they're not writing for the church anymore. They're writing for the church. Right. Because to really make money off CCLI, every church needs to be playing your song. Right? Yeah. Only the bigger ones make really, money. And so significant amounts of money. And so every church has to play your song. So people cease to write songs for their church, and now they're writing for everyone's church. And when you do that, you generalize everything. And I think it takes away from some of the creativity, like you're probably going to worship God differently in Charleston than they do in Seattle or LA. I mean, you use different words, different phrases, and then there's different churches, there's different age groups, like there's different cultural things that are happening, and so it does kind of vanillify things, because all of a sudden any little word that would keep your song from going to that next level, they're like, well, let's take this word out and put this in. Like, well, people don't want to sing a song at this tempo, so let's put it at this tempo. And it's sort of like you create this, like, this thing that everyone kind of likes, but nobody really loves. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, I was very appreciative. You sent me your album that's coming out, I think, in February. It's Peopled with Dreams.
With Dreams. Yep.
Yeah. You'll get a kick out of this. So my daughter, she definitely has an ear for she doesn't just listen to everything everybody listens to, but it is kind of her main go-to. Like, she likes Post Malone and Billie Eilish and all that. But some of the stuff that I play, she'll be like, who is this? But anyway, I played Christ Jesus, and she was like, who is this? And I was like, this is John Mark Mcmillan, who, she didn't know who you were, but I just thought that was cool. An 8th grader that listens to Billie Eilish, there's something about that song that she, like, so the stuff that you're writing now, and people who have heard me on the podcast that I've been a part of, they know that I'm a huge fan, and like, you're not in that pathway anymore as far as churches paying you. I mean, you're not. They don't seem like worship songs. I mean, I know that that's a very subjective thing. Sure. I'm sure it's worship to you, but these aren't songs that churches are singing. I wouldn't imagine, are they?
No, I don't think so. And I wasn't writing them with that in mind, Right. And I kind of knew. I was like, I reached a point where I used to feel like I have to put some of those songs on a record. And I've got to do that song. Well, let me be straight. I actually do like worship, like, I'm not against it. But, like, mostly when I sit down to write, I'm not thinking about writing an anthem, like a worship anthem. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do, And I used to feel like I had to. And I feel like I'm at the age now where I'm sort of like, I just need to do what I love and what I believe in, And if the worship song happens to be one of those songs, then that's great too. But no, I knew, and I kind of wondered. I don't think the worship. Well, honestly, Mercury and Lightning I think the worship community bailed on me with that record.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. And
was that unexpected, or you kind of expected that?
I didn't really know what to think. I kind of expected it. I was like, well, maybe if we land one big song. But then a lot of times you get those people who are just listening to that one song, and they're like, have no idea what the rest of the record is about. So.
Right.
Yeah. So I just I don't know. I wasn't trying to write worship songs, but yeah, you're right. It is worship to me, but I wasn't trying to write like corporate songs. If people want to use them, that's cool too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not what I was going for. In fact, I kind of knew it was like some Christians might have a little trouble with these songs. And I tried to mix it up a little bit. I feel like with Mercury and Lightning, I was writing songs that or maybe the past couple of records, I was writing songs that were Christian, but I didn't signal Christian. Right. As in this one, I was like, some of these ideas are going to be hard for people, so I'm actually going to signal Christian a little harder because some of the underlying themes are going to be a little more challenging, And so that turned out to be a lot of fun,
Yeah. Where is, I think I described your Mercury and Lightning stuff. For me, it was, if I described it to somebody, I'd say, it's kind of poppy, but in a dark 80s-ish sort of vibe. And I don't know if that sits right with you or not.
No, it's fine.
Brilliant stuff. I don't know how to describe this new album.
Yeah.
Where is it coming from? Like, it's just so good. But like, how? If you had to give kind of a snapshot of like musically, mainly is what I'm talking about right now. Like, where's this music coming from?
Well, we wanted to make a record that was a lot of fun to listen to. And so we sort of, me and the producer Jacob, we kind of created some rules. We're like, number one is, we used to be really concerned with like, is it a real instrument or not? And I'm like, I don't care if it sounds good. If we create it, like if we like totally did it in the box or didn't, and so the rule number one is like anything goes as far as sounds, as long as they're interesting and inspiring. And the second rule is that we're not going to do anything more times than it needs to be done unless we just have purposely decided to be excessive. So there's one super excessive moment on the record, which is at the end of Hammering Heart, where there's like a 1.5-minute orchestra, like a space orchestra. But other than that, a lot of the songs are short, which we didn't make them short on purpose, but it's like I want it to be catchy and fun. And so those are kind of the two rules about production. And I've never really done that before. It's kind of my attempt to make a little bit of a pop album. I don't think the sounds are all pop sounds, but I was trying to just create something that I thought was like a pop. I'm calling it an existential pop record. It's still got a little bit of rock and roll. It's still got a little bit of the 80s, but it's got a lot of 90s R&B and pop vibes too.
Right, but it still comes across very unique. Like it doesn't come across like bubblegum pop. Hats off, man. Once again,
thanks,
holy
man.
cow! And I haven't even gotten through the first 4 songs. I keep playing them over and over. So looking forward to the second half of that album.
Yeah, awesome.
So we talked a little ahead of time that. About some of the stuff that I want to talk to you about. I was thinking, actually talking to my pastor today, and just how I think if I hate using the word deconstruction, but everybody knows what that means. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I've been on this path for like 7 years or more. And I have finally found myself in a place to where it's I don't want to say that it stopped, because that makes it sound like now I get it. I've got everything together. But I do feel like, there was a lot of pain in the process. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of unsettledness in the process. And now I feel like the dust has settled and I'm comfortable with the new place that I'm at. And I am really happy to report that I consider myself 100% Jesus follower, Christian, whatever, whatever you want to call it. But like, if someone could, if you could somehow paint a picture of my spiritual beliefs and just where I was at 10 years ago, it would look completely different from where I'm at. Like it's like I can't even put it into words, but I am a different person spiritually. And I guess I just have to kind of chalk it up and say, I think this was all intended. I think God has been part of this process. And, I don't know. But I guess if I had to, one way that I would explain it is, I lived the vast majority of my life growing up as like a Pentecostal. It was like I saw Christianity through this very narrow tunnel that everybody was telling me was the only way to look through things. And so I think as stuff started to not make sense and not sit well with me, I really feel like you either kind of dig your heels in the sand and like, but I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep investigating and I'm going to keep seeking, or you just bail.
Yep.
You know? And I think it's been very reassuring and like a comforting thing to see that how I was seeing Christianity is such a small percentage of Christians as a whole. Yeah. And I just always saw it as, no, this is how you're supposed to believe. But I mean, things like the atonement. Well, like for example, like I felt guilty for a while that the penal substitution thing just wasn't jiving with me. And I recently heard that there's so many Christians that see it as more of a Christus Victor, I think I'm saying it correctly, that basically God, the Son, and the Holy Spirit collaboratively saw that earth, humanity had turned its back on God. And it kind of like how C.S. Lewis shows it in the Chronicles of Narnia. And there is a rescue plan of the whole Trinity to say, we love people, we love creation, we're going to rescue them all. And it's like, I didn't know I could believe that. Like, that sounds so much better, and it really does resonate. But I was just curious, like, would you say that you have gone through a similar transition, I guess similar as in, like, very profound changes in the last 10 years, or what's kind of been your journey?
Definitely, my journey is very similar to yours, hearing you describe it like that. Like I feel like there's one way to see things, and things were a certain way. Like I assumed things, or I was told things were a specific way, and I felt like when it didn't start to make sense to me, that I was like, do I have to let go of all of it? When it turns out, like, belief, like, and this is the thing, we're told we're supposed to believe in Jesus, right? But no one tells us what believing actually is, right? And that's been my problem with church. It's not that I disagree with what they're saying. Like, I just don't think they always communicate. Actually, I don't think they even always agree on what these terms mean. What does it actually mean to believe? And so, like, a lot of us are taught that to believe means, this table is here. I believe it is here, But that's not the same thing as like, I'm going to go pick up my kids from school later, and I believe I'm not going to get in a car accident on the way there. Yeah. But I don't know that for a fact. But if I didn't leave the house because I was afraid I was going to get in a car accident, like, I would have to deal with other issues. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so belief, I don't think belief and having a concrete knowledge about something are not the same thing at all, I don't think. Right. And I'm not even sure that I know how to nail belief down. Like, I have friends who aren't believers, but they think the gospel is beautiful. They just don't think it actually happened, but they want to believe it, and they see beauty and value in it. So that could be believing as well. Who am I to say what is believing and what's not believing, Right. But I believe that, like, I see my belief now as more of a spectrum rather than a thing. More than a static thing. So, for instance, like, I would say now, I'm definitely a believer. I'm definitely a Christian. Like, I have different ideas about what Christianity is than I used to, which is really difficult. I could talk about that in a minute. But as far as belief as being a spectrum, like, on my best days, me and God are best friends. Like, we are actual friends. I'm actual friends with the creator of the universe. On my worst days, Christianity is just an amazing way to be in the world. And so, like, I don't have to argue. I don't have to sit around. Like, I just used to spend hours and days and begging God to show me. But I realized, like, the truth is somewhere in between. As far as I'm concerned, the truth is somewhere in between those two things. Yeah. And I don't have to veer out of those lines. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's sort of like if someone wants to tell me Christianity is not a great way to be in the world, then I'd go back to them and say, but where do we get ideas like equality? Where do we get ideas like love, like respect? Like, do we just sort of, I feel like, and I'm not an anti-secularist necessarily, but sometimes I want to say, do you guys think like this is a natural thing? Like, do you think that humans naturally, and I've heard people that I even respect say that, children aren't born racist, they're taught racism. That's actually not true. Like, kids are born defensive and skeptical of people who don't look like them and act like them. We have to teach them how to respect other people, you know? Yeah. And so like at the worst, like, and the church hasn't always done it well. I mean, God, they haven't always done it well, but at least religion is stepping up to the plate and trying to do that job, you know? Yeah. And to me, that's the place of religion in the world, is to teach people how to be in it, you know? And I don't understand how we assume that if we remove that from the world, that we're just going to all naturally, you know, treat each other well and love each other, you know, like, and I'm not saying you need religion to believe those things, but I'm saying, like, where do they come from?
Yeah, sure.
Like, I don't think they just naturally spring up, you know?
Yeah. And I think what's super interesting too, as far as what you're saying, you know, in worst days, it's a great way to live, is Jesus, his number one thing that he told people was to follow him. Yeah. In fact, I think I could go on the record and say, I mean, someone please email me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think he ever asked anyone to even worship him. Yeah. Now, does that mean that we don't worship him? No, I definitely want to worship Jesus, but there's like something real deal important with Christians, like reducing it almost to, I followed the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's what he asked us to do. Yeah. You know, and I think that church has put so much stock and emphasis on what you believe in a way where it's like, if you believe this way, you're out. Like,
totally.
If you believe this way, you're in. And that was not what Jesus was all about. Yeah. That was not what he was even trying to start.
Yeah.
It's like a belief club.
Totally. You know? Well, yeah, and I mean, actually, Jesus, while he was on the earth, like, there are moments when he told people not to worship him. Right. He even said, "Don't call me good." You know, they said, "You're good." It's like, no, don't call me good. Only the Father's. I mean, so Jesus said, "Don't worship me. Don't call me good." And then they try to make him king, and he runs away. "Don't make me king." And then he dies. He's resurrected. He ascends, and then he's like, "Okay, now Jesus is Lord," right? And it's like, well, how do we worship you now? You're not here. And so he creates the body of Christ. He says, "As you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me." So it's almost like Jesus is the anti-king. But see, like, I feel like early on, I was really attracted to this version of Christianity that has, you know, we personify the deity, which is fine. The deity, you know, we personify God in Jesus, which is fine. But then we treat Jesus like we would a human leader. You know, it's like affection, and he wants the songs. We got to say good things about him. We got to make sure everyone knows his name, and they talk good about his name. But that doesn't really seem to be the Jesus of the Bible. You know, like, Jesus almost receives love vicariously, you know, like through the way you treat other people, you know, as have you done unto the least of these, you know. I think as James says, that true worship is going to visit with orphans and widows, and that kind of, you know. And I'm also not reducing Christianity to simply justice. Sure. Justice is part of it, but I'm not reducing it to simply justice. But I do think that, you know, I was in this world that we had created this super tribal agreement, you know, where, like, if someone puts Jesus down, you're going to get mad. If you use Jesus' name wrong, someone's going to get mad. And like, but this is not necessarily how the deity is worshipped. You know, mm-hmm. It's sort of like we created the God we wanted, or the king we wanted, and then Jesus became the excuse to live the way we already wanted to live. Do you know what I mean? Like, and we create these worldly. And I'm not anti-church. I'm just saying, like, now I'm starting to realize that, I guess, agreeing with you in the sense that, like, reverence to Jesus. You almost can't have reverence outside of practice. Like, Christianity is a practice-based religion, you know? Mm-hmm. And we've sort of made it into a teaching-based religion or a feeling-based religion, and the feeling people and the teaching people argue back and forth. Meanwhile, none of them are practicing the faith. Right. Or few of them are really practicing the faith. And there's someone out there who doesn't get all the feels and who doesn't have all the right theology, who is just trying to practice Christianity.
Right. Meanwhile, we're trying to make sure everybody knows that gay people are not Christians. You know, I mean, it's like, what in the world?
I know. In the meanwhile, we're arguing over those issues and not actually practicing the faith. Right. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So this is speculative on my part, but let me start by asking you, did you and Dave Bazan build a relationship? I saw somewhere where you guys were, I don't know if it was Cornerstone or somewhere where you guys played back-to-back. Y'all, like, shared a stage somewhere. Is that true?
Yep, it was that. I can't remember the name of the festival. but yeah, we played back to back, and he was really nice to me. I think someone, to create some buzz about the event, was said, like, John Mark and Dave Bazan are back to back, both bearded guys, and one's an atheist, one's a Christian. They must gonna get in an argument, and it wasn't. But it wasn't like I'm a huge fan of Dave Bazan. Like we loved the show. My whole band was on the, they were standing beside the stage the whole time.
Oh,
he was hilarious.
Artist.
Afterwards we met and shook hands. He was really kind, and we laughed. And then I played my set. But yeah, I think it was more of
so you guys don't know each other well, sort of
not
thing?
really well. I know people who know him, and we've bumped into each other, over the years. But that's probably the only interaction he would probably remember. But I remember being a kid. Totally. I remember being a teenager and going to see Pedro the Lion. Like I was a big fan.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Yeah, and I, Dave and I got to know each other somewhat, but just because of having him on Bad Christian multiple times and really getting to know him through those conversations. I think the reason why I brought that up is I sometimes speculate, and I don't think Dave Bazan will hear this, but if so, this is all in love, and I'm probably wrong, and I don't know you like this, man, but it seems like a lot of people may take we'll call it the Dave Bazan route of basically, wait a second, there's something wrong here. I don't believe, and a lot, I would say the majority of critique that Bazan has on the church and Christianity and all that stuff, I completely resonate with. But I wonder if someone like Dave Bazan was not able to maintain faith in Christianity because there was never a alternative of approaching things, because he was brought up, to my knowledge, he was brought up very similar to me, which was very, very unhealthy, legalistic, judgmental, fire and damnation sort of approaches to faith. And I just sometimes wonder if people like that, they don't have a choice but to get out, because to their knowledge, all the Christians think the same way and believe the same way. And he's like, I can't have anything to do with that. But I don't know.
Totally.
That's speculative on my part.
I've thought that many a times. And I saw a guy tweet the other day. Oh, gosh. I don't want to ruin it because it was so good. But, he was talking about all the people who are leaving the faith, over racism. He's like, all you people are leaving the faith, but you've never sat under, like, a black minister before. He's like,
wow.
You feel like you only have two choices, like, like this sort of church, the segregated church, or no church at all. He's like, he's like, I'm offended. He's like, I'm totally offended. He's like, you're just as bad as them. You don't want to give me a chance either. It's like you're going to walk away from the faith because you don't like white male leaders, but you've never sat under a female leader, a minority leader. You know what I mean? I was like, but it's true. The body of Christ is really, really diverse. Really, really diverse. And it is frustrating when people make up their mind about God or the church based on one specific experience. Because, see, all my experiences have been really good. Even when I was having my deconstruction, the hardest part was I loved all the fundamentalists that I went to church with. Like, they're so sweet. And I was like, oh, they're going to hear this podcast, and they're probably going to get their feelings hurt because of the stuff that I'm saying, but I love them. You know what I mean? Like, I legitimately do. I can't see the world the way they see the world. Like, it's impossible for me to, like, change the way I see the world, but I really love them. And like a lot of the people, like if I was in jail, and I had my one phone call, it would probably be one of those friends who would maybe be a little more along the lines of a fundamentalist. Because those have been the most solid people in my life. Those have been the people to show up, when I needed somebody. And those have been the people to love me no matter what. And that's been my experience. And so that's the tough part, listening to a lot of the podcasts where people are just so, angry, and then you hear their story and you're like, God, if I had your story, I'd feel the same way. But don't you realize this is not the only thing? Like people who are abused, even sexually abused in church. I'm like, yeah, but church is still safer than the mall. You know what I mean? Right. Like the reason you're abused in church is because there's always more opportunity for abuse in a place where people trust. So people get abused more in families than they do at church, and they get abused more at church than they do at the mall, because at the mall, people know you're not supposed to let your kids walk away with strangers, But see, I don't want to live without that trust. I want to live in places where that is a possibility. I don't want to shut myself and my family off from the world.
Yeah.
And so
I like what you say as far as your love for fundamentalists in your life, and it really, I think that to me is one of the major issues, because it's like with the ex-evangelical crowd, and I would say that I resonate with a lot of it. I've even thought to myself, man, am I ex-evangelical? I thought it was really cool. I had lunch, like I said, with my pastor earlier today, and I was just telling him, I was like, I am finally comfortable in my skin being around what most would say people are evangelicals, and whatever that means, I don't think that I am. And I thought it was really cool. I didn't expect this. He's just like, you know what? I actually don't think I am an evangelical. But the tricky thing is now is that if you're in the ex-evangelical crowd, a lot of like there's an extreme ex-evangelical, just like there's extreme fundamentalists, and they are both extremely unhealthy, and they mirror each other. Like I'll never forget, I saw on Twitter where there was a guy, and he seriously just had it seemed like the best intentions. He had a podcast, and it was something along the lines of, I'm trying to understand more perspective of the LGBTQ community and what the Bible says. Like, is there anyone that would like to come on the podcast and discuss this and broaden my vision with it? Basically I grew up a certain way, and I want to learn more. And dude, he was, I think a guy from the ex-evangelical crowd asked him a question, and then this guy's answer led the ex-evangelical to basically say, well, it's obvious that you have a very elementary perspective, and I don't have time to educate you on stuff that you should know, and just hammered this guy. I mean, absolutely hammered him. And it's like, it feels like if just like the ex-evangelicals, fundamentalists, it's like, if you aren't like us, you're out. We have all the rules down pat. We know the terminology. If you don't, you're not with us. If you don't see things like us, you're not with us. You're against us. And they're really, there's no difference.
I know.
It's really the same.
Well, what's funny is I heard someone talk about this recently. Like if you take someone from both of those crowds and you just take the terminology away, like, right. Do they live their lives in a different? Like, how do they treat people at work? How do they treat their kids? Do they cheat on their taxes? You know what I mean? Which is always funny. Someone who cheats on their taxes and is banging me over the head about voting for Bernie Sanders always blows my mind. It's sort of like everyone does their part, but you all need to do your part. But right. I'm not paying my taxes, whatever. But but do their lives really look that different? You know what I mean? Like, without the signals, like take all the signals away. Right. Do they look that different? Like, and I don't know that they do. Like, I don't know that they're really any different.
Right. And it seems like especially if you're going to maintain a faith in Christianity, it's like, wait a second, isn't love the thing that is supposed to mark us, even to the degree of loving your enemies? And if you see these people that you're so bitter towards as opposition, those are the very people that you need to challenge yourself to love. And I don't, what I don't want to say is like what you said. There has been people that have been so abused by the church. I mean, I talked to a gay guy that was literally dunked in water like 30, 45 seconds at a time, basically to get the homosexuality out of him. And I'm like, how does that guy turn around and say, yeah, I love the church? And I haven't walked in his shoes, so that's not what I'm saying. But it just seems like our ultimate goal, all of us, should be to love people that is not natural for us to love.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Jesus says he says as much, right? He says like, oh, you love your family. He's like,
right.
Well, like the worst people in the world love their family. I mean, Hitler loved his family, right? So What is that? You love your family, so what? He's like, you want to be like God. He's like, God loves everybody, So if you really want to be like God, you got to love the people that you don't like, who don't look like you, don't feel like you, and think like you.
Yeah.
It's easy to love the people who agree with you. That's real easy.
Yeah.
That's not even if you can't do that, like, you're like,
right.
Who are you? You're in trouble.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Now, how would you answer the question, like if someone asked you in an interview, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. If someone asked, are you an evangelical?
Sure.
Like how would you answer that?
Well, what's funny is because I grew up in a church that was very sort of non-denominational, and we didn't use that terminology. So I never considered myself an evangelical, you know? And I think so. I guess you got to sort of define those terms,
Sure.
you know? And I guess later on when I started hearing that term, I always felt like it applied a little bit more to mainline denominational Christians, you know, or was more of a cultural term. You know, I mean, I guess the term literally means like someone a group who believes in evangelizing for Christ, you know. I would just want to like define what even that means to evangelize.
Yeah.
You know, because and you know, like a lot of people probably be a little annoyed at this, like, and I hope this doesn't get me in trouble because I love Jesus. Like, I am a believer. But I also, like, I can't be so sure that Christians have the monopoly on God either.
Right.
You know, I obviously think it's the best way, you know,
Right.
or I wouldn't be one, you know. But it's really hard for me to stand up and be like, look, guys, the name of the God you are serving is the wrong name, and you need to come worship the name of the God I'm serving.
Right.
You know, whether or not, no matter how you're living your life, you know, like you need to come, like, make sure you change the name. Even though, like, you know, we did, you know, no one said Jesus. His name was, you know, whatever it was in Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever. And even that name was like Josh, right? Like it wasn't like a unique name. Like he was the guy. So it's like, you know, so I have a hard time doing that. And I have a hard time telling people they're going to go to hell if they don't reverence the deity. Because I don't believe that's what Jesus was saying. And I'm open to being wrong. And here's what I like about this stance, by the way, and this sort of to me reveals like where people are coming from, is nowhere does even the most fundamentalist would have to agree with this. Like, you aren't saved by believing in hell, right?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, no, you're saved.
But tell an evangelical that you don't believe in hell anymore.
They're like, they think you're going
not
there.
a Christian anymore.
It's like,
exactly.
But like, even if the most fundamentalist was honest, like by every scripture they use, like you don't get saved by believing in hell. And even like my dad would say, even Satan believes in hell, right? So, I mean, you know, you get saved by believing in Jesus. Now we need to go back and define what believe means. And we need to define what Jesus means. You know, and I'm not trying to make it all spacey, you know.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to believe? And what does it mean to believe in Jesus? You know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that that's so self-evident. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and my eyes have really been open recently. I'd say this is kind of like the last major shift is there are some very wise Bible student / teachers that believe there's a pretty damn good chance that Jesus wins everybody, you know, and my gosh, it's like that really, you know, and I think some people are just like, well, yeah, that feels good. So obviously it clicks, but it's like, no, there's more depth to that than just this feels good. Like, you know, for me, there were just so many things, and I'm with you. You know, I could be wrong about this sort of stuff, but there's just so much that doesn't make sense out of, you know, we say, man, these are just hard questions that we'll just never know. But it's like, whoa, let's slow down. God gave us a brain. These are almost impasses here. Like, this is stuff that it's okay to be like, wait a second, this is a problem. And one of them being that God would be willing to create billions and billions and billions of people, knowing that the vast majority are going to burn forever. Like, that's a real big problem. And I'm okay with saying that his thoughts and his ways are higher than mine, and I'm operating from a little human brain, but you know, it definitely, you know, guys like Richard Rohr, Brian McLaren, and some of these guys that are really laying out a pretty good case for, you know, everyone being saved. It resonates.
Yeah,
for sure.
Totally. And if you're a believer, you should at least want that to be the case, right?
Exactly.
You
It
know?
shouldn't be wrong to maybe be like, you know, cross my fingers. I hope that's what happens,
I know, exactly.
you know?
Yeah, totally.
And It's crazy too how once you have your mind open to something like that, you actually do start to see scripture a little bit differently. Like, for example, I always saw the passage where it says every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. I've always thought, and I've even taught people, like, for some people that is voluntary here on this earth, and they will go to heaven and voluntarily do that. For people that are going to go to hell, they are made to bow and they're made to confess. Where now I'm like, wait a second. Seems like Paul says that if anybody confesses Jesus as Lord, that is all they need, for a relationship with God. And it's like, well, if every knee is going to bow and every tongue's going to confess, that may be some really good news right there, right in our faces that we're just ignoring.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, that's a good sign, John.
It is. And you start to see everything different, like,
Yeah.
Even Jesus himself, like, Jesus dies for our sins. Jesus is the image of the invisible God. And all of a sudden it's like, so God himself dies for us, right? Like, even if you just think about that from a psychological standpoint, like, up until that time, like, gods didn't die. You sacrificed to gods. And it wasn't weird for ancient people. It was sad, but it wasn't odd for the ancient people if they needed something to sacrifice, even a child, even a firstborn son,
Yeah.
And so here you have Jesus is sacrificed, and all of a sudden, like, the God that you've been, like, sacrificing to when you need something, when you're in trouble, when you're in a mess, when you're messed up, and you need the rain for your crops, or you need someone to help you get away from the village next door that has more people and they're mad at you and they're going to kill you because there are no jails.
Yeah.
You're just going to be obliterated, and you offer up a sign, you throw someone in a volcano, you burn somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like really normal everyday stuff to the ancient world, right?
Right.
To sacrifice son. Now all of a sudden, like, God flips the script and he's sacrificing to you. Like, what does that do psychologically? All of a sudden, God has taken responsibility for everything that's ever happened. And I have this theory, and I wrote a song about it. It's the last song on the record. But
The newest?
Yeah, the newest record. It's the very last song. And it's sort of asking the question of, we all want to be God. We sort of covet the power of God. Like, I mean, we want the money and we want to be in control, But I wonder if God is all powerful, but also he feels the pain of every person who's ever lived at the same time, And so it's sort of like all of a sudden it's like, okay, God is not just this one thing. God is something else. And so God, makes these difficult decisions and creates the world, and we see all this violence, but God is not alien from the violence. He's present in the violence, and he is the most victimized, being, because he feels the pain of everybody that ever was.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means,
like
but psychologically it does something. You start to see God and the whole world a little bit differently.
Right.
But it does for me anyway.
Yeah.
So
that sounds like something that you're currently thinking through and exploring. What would be some, we'll wrap it up here, but what would be some other things that maybe you're not necessarily wrestling with, but maybe there are some things that, it's kind of a challenge right now in your thoughts and belief system and all that. Are there some current things that are low-hanging fruit of stuff that you're thinking through and maybe struggling with?
I don't know. I mean, I struggled for a long time. I think I've given myself a break from struggling.
Yeah.
I think I've decided to major on gratefulness, because I've realized this, like, no matter what happens, no matter what is real, I'm here, and that's a freaking miracle, And because, like, if you think about all the people that have existed in the world, like, most of them have already died, but I'm here, right? And the world is the earth is sitting in the black oblivion of space, and if you get a click away from the earth, you're destroyed. You're done, but we're here, and so it's like we have these, like, little miracles, and I sort of decided at a point, like, I don't want to waste my miracle in conflict, and I'm not disagreeing. I actually enjoy the back and forth, but I feel like I had several years where I was just in so much agony, over the reality of my faith, over whether or not God was real and what kind of God he was. And honestly, I struggled a lot about where I go when I die, And I do believe in heaven, like the afterlife kind of heaven. I really do. But I've also come to terms if I just go to sleep and don't wake up, that's got to be okay too, you know. Right. And people are like, oh, it's heresy.
You won't be upset about it.
No, I won't be. But also, you know, like I don't really think much about what was happening before I was born. I'm not like afraid of that, you know, abyss. Why would I be afraid of the abyss in front of me, you know? Yeah. But I'd really, but that's not a way out to say I don't believe in heaven or the afterlife. I do. I don't believe it's going to be anything like what I think it's going to be. I mean, maybe AI resurrects everybody, you know, and Jesus is like, see, I was here all along, guys. You know, but, gosh. But what is low-hanging fruit? Man, I don't know.
Oh, I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
I like what you said, man.
Although we'll say this. I love Christianity. I'm really loving my Christianity right now.
Yeah.
I'm really loving going to church. Like, I don't know what, I think once I was like, okay, this is what it is, and this is what it can be. And I was like, I like going there. I like seeing my friends. I like praising the Lord. I like that one day out of the week, someone is telling me to love somebody else.
Right.
You know?
Right. And my whole paradigm has shifted with that too, for sure, because it's like all of a sudden I realize, wait a second, you know, not every, you know, sometimes I don't have the right intentions, but most people are here because they want to love people more, and they have bought into community and taking care of one another. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, like at the church that I'm a part of, just will empty their wallet $1,000 at a time to help somebody else. I'm like, my gosh, that's what I want to be a part of. Like that's what, sign me up for that, man. But it was a struggle for me, I think, for a while. What always ate at me was, I was like, man, I feel like I'm so different from everybody else, and I don't know what they would think if they knew how I thought and all that. But it got to a point where I was like, no, wait a second, we are all seeking God, and we all suspect that there is something really profound about Jesus when it comes to seeking God. I'm like, that's all we need to be connected. I mean, because otherwise we're saying, no, we figured out a certain formula that we all aspire to, and that's what connects us, as we crack the code, you know?
Yeah, totally. And it's not like, I can kind of agree with a lot of the things people say about church, about not going to church. Like, I get
exactly.
it. I do.
I get
but
it too.
There's no one who seems to be able to offer me like a better alternative. They can give me all the reasons to not go to church, but they can't really give me anything better.
Right.
You know? Yeah. I'm like, you know, show me the way. Show me the way, master. You know what I mean? Like, can you show me a better way? Because I would be very interested in that if you could.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Well, dude, this has been fun, man.
Yeah, man.
It's been too long, and we'll have to do it again soon. I'd love to play some clips of your album at the end of this episode.
Yeah, totally.
For that.
Play whatever you want. It's 100% free. I don't have there's no publishing or anything. I've worked really hard to have full ownership of this record. So
cool. Well, I sent an email to like 3,000 people, and I have a secret website, and I'm actually charging people $5 for a sneak preview. Is that okay?
Hey, as long as you send me the emails, you can do whatever you want. Send me those emails.
I'll give you 10% of my profits.
All right, that's probably better than the record companies.
So we drive to work, we walk our dogs, we make babies, we sing songs, and all along are we asleep inside the miracle of it all.